Hi, my name is Alyssa Green, and today we're going to talk about the psychological view on whether or not it is okay to spank your child. I have a team of experts and also a mother here that's going to talk about her view on whether she feels like it's okay to discipline her child. This is going to be a psychological view and also a real-life view on whether or not a corporal punishment takes a toll to a whole new level of more of an abuse and physical aspect, or whether it is just a discipline that has been going on for many years. Today I'm going to bring in Kayla Daniel. She is a mom of a little boy. Hi Kayla, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Alright, so tell me a little bit about your little boy.
I have a 7-month-old, and personally I don't know if I would spank yet because he's just not to that age where spanking is appropriate. But growing up I was spanked, and it didn't really make me respect my parents, so it made me fearful of them, and well, my dad is who spanked me, and it didn't make me understand why things were right and wrong. It just was like I shouldn't do it.
And so, was your view on that as a child growing up, was it just, did he just spank with his hand, or did he use objects?
Yeah, he spanked with his hand, but it was like several times. I would say 20 to 30 spanks, so. Which I don't agree with that. If I ever do spank, I would just say like a few.
Right, because when I was growing up, my dad and my mom both spanked with belts.
Yeah.
And today that is viewed a whole different way than it was maybe 20 years ago. So it takes a whole new toll. So do you think that as a mom now, do you think you'll ever get in that aspect to use a belt?
No.
Or switch, or?
No, I would never spank with the belt or switch, and I don't know, just definitely not. If I was going to do it, I'd do it with my hand.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Well, statistics show that usually a child is not receptive to spanking until the age of 5. So do you think that if your child's behaving in a mild manner or ignorant manner at the age of 3 or 4, do you think you'll sit him down in a corner and tell him what happened and why you're mad at him?
Yeah.
Or do you think you'll just have
that? It's hard because it's hard to explain to a 3-year-old why something's wrong, and I think that's why some parents go straight into spanking because they're angry and they're not going to understand anyway, so they just spank. And so I think a spat on the hand or leg, I'm sure I would just do that, just instantly, out of reaction, and then once they're older, try to explain, why something's wrong or right before I spank.
Right, and I totally understand that. Also, as a child, you have that aggressive behavior and you have the terrible twos.
Yeah.
If you're already showing personality traits of a more aggressive behavior, do you think that your child won't be as receptive to punishment as others?
Yeah, like it'd be harder to just explain instead of spank. Yeah, he's only 7 months old, but I can definitely see that he's has a temper, and I don't know if it's just being a baby and he doesn't know, but he always needs attention, wants to be held. He has that really kind of needy personality, and his father was spanked as a child. He was also beat, and he has has had aggressive behavior that's shown up later in life. But I was spanked and never had that aggression.
Right,
so.
And that's how I am too.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who was spanked as a child too, and she went through this huge rebellious stage as to where her parents, obviously didn't care as much because they treated her bad. I think it's just based on your child.
Yeah.
More than based on whether it's right or wrong. I think you have to really know who your child is in order to discipline them the right way. Okay, so anyways, at the basis of all this, you're still undecisive about whether or not you're going to use spanking or just a more verbal punishment rather than that. So we're going to bring in an expert now. Her name's Vanessa McAllister, and she will talk to us about the psychological view on how psychologists view corporal punishment rather than just it being reality. Come on in, Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. All right. Well, I'm sitting here talking with her today about whether or not she feels it's okay to spank her child or not, and whether it's more seen in society as a bad thing, or whether it should just be kept as an individual parenting situation. So, what, on your facts and basis on all this, what do you think is going on with this subject?
I think that whether or not you should spank a child is a really controversial issue. I think that mainly spanking is kind of seen as a negative punishment, and I think there's a lot of research that kind of backs that up. I've brought some articles today of different research that has been done that I can kind of give you some information about that will let you have kind of a better idea of whether it's good to spank a child or whether it's actually just harmful for them.
Okay.
In the first research, the results found that most parents that used the corporal punishment on the participants most also reported some kind of psychological aggression, whether this was either externalizing their behaviors, so that they would either act out in aggressive behaviors, have fights with other kids, and stuff like that. And that was kind of based on whether or not how often they were being punished by their parents.
Okay.
And they also had internalizing behaviors where the child would just take it in and have more depressive symptoms because they were having a lack of self-confidence and feeling like they could never do anything right.
Okay.
So this is kind of one of the things that makes it more, I don't know, more a negative thing for spanking.
Okay.
Like you don't really want to spank them and then cause all these problems.
Well, growing up to be an expert and knowing all this stuff on parental views, how were you raised as a child?
I was spanked as a child,
Okay.
but obviously I don't think I had any abnormal aggressiveness patterns or anything like that, and I think that had to do with, there's other research that shows that spanking alone isn't the cause of having aggressive behaviors or antisocial behaviors, that spanking mainly kind of comes from either predisposition, genetics, or the child's own personality. So research will show that children that have genetics that favor towards aggressive behavior, then spanking is only just going to further that development of aggressive behavior.
Right. And we briefly talked about with Kayla about how her baby's father, has more aggressive behavior as an adult, and maybe not so much, maybe that towards his child. But do you think that will affect the way he disciplines her child?
Yeah, I think that him having the aggressiveness is already something that he got from his childhood about him being spanked. And so I think that's going to kind of give him, it's going to lead to kind of more of a stress on him when he's with the child. And so he's not going to know how to react as well. I think, so research will show that parents who have stress usually don't really know how to take it out on the child as well, so they just resort to the corporal punishment and the spanking and as a way of trying to get the behavior to change without really taking the time to understand the child and trying to figure out what's really going on that's causing the child to act out.
Okay, I understand that. And Kayla, what is your point of view on that? Do you agree with her? Do you think that is going to affect, the discipline on your child, since y'all don't associate discipline?
We're not together anymore, obviously, so we don't live together, so it's going to be hard to decide on something we both really, how we want to punish our son. Eli is his name, because I just feel like our views are different, because he was spanked and so was I, but I don't, I just don't know about spanking. So I think that's something we'll have to sit down and talk about when he gets to that age, whether he'll be, we'll be able to follow through on that when we're alone with Eli. I don't know, but he does have very aggressive behavior, so I can see him wanting to resort to that instantly just out of anger. So.
Right, that is interesting. So statistically, how do you think, is it more common for men to spank their children, or is it more common for women? How is that viewed?
Yeah, it is more common for men to spank their children. They're just kind of predispositioned, I guess, to just kind of be like, okay, I'm just going to spank you and that'll end the behavior. Whereas mothers are more apt to be understanding and try to talk to the child and figure out really what's going on and talking about their emotions and really trying to help them. And it's really, the research has really shown that it's better for you to give the child kind of love and acceptance and understanding, and really try to show that the child is an individual and that they have, really listen to what they say and what they need from you, so that they can actually act in a way that's socially appropriate. And so one of the best ways to punish a child without doing a negative punishment such as the spanking is going to be to put them in timeout and let them sit there and kind of think about what they've done, and then once they're done with the timeout, you talk to them and explain, okay, do you know why you were in a timeout? This is what's going to happen if you continue to act this way. And that's seen as more of a positive punishment, so that you can actually get the child to kind of realize what they're doing and stop the behavior without giving them a negative punishment. So fathers do kind of have to look at that and try to be more objective about that, instead of just right away spanking the child to try to stop the behavior.
All right, and that also goes back to, I lived in a split home, and my parents both spanked me. There was that equal, boundary on the discipline. Do you think that the more positive aspect of timeout, have you seen better results through that, or does it just depend on the kid?
In some instances, it will depend on the kid. Generally, as far as that, if you're spanking a kid that's already has, their genetics are in line with aggressive behavior, then they're obviously going to be more aggressive. Whereas if you kind of take them in a different approach and you try to talk to them and understand them and have them rationalize their behavior, they're going to be less likely to be aggressive in the future. But with other kids, it's really just going to kind of depend on their personality and their situational factors and the stressors in life. Some of the results show that, I guess, the more stressed out the parent is and they take that out on the kid, it can cause the kid to feel less self-confident with themselves and cause them to not really be sure why it's happening, because it can become infrequent as the stressors are happening. And with these kind of results, there's research that shows that these kids are not learning to be able to problem solve as well. And that's one of so they're having trouble in later life because they haven't learned how to develop the problem solving skills that they need to, because they're feeling less confident about themselves. So it really just kind of depends on the kid and the situation, but a lot of evidence is going to suggest taking other means of punishing the child rather than spanking them.
Okay, and so I'm going to ask you, why do you think nowadays in the society, such as 2012, do you think we, base corporal punishment as a bad thing, when in maybe the 1960s, when your parents was growing up and, your grandparents were disciplining, they probably never thought twice of whether spanking a child or not was bad? And why do you think that's so focused on these days?
I think personally just there's more light shed on the subject because of media and TV, just people are talking about it more. So
right.
Yeah, I definitely think that developments in psychology and more access to the media and it being a more available subject and not so taboo to talk about, it really has brought kind of light to whether is it bad, does it get into abuse, is it, are parents taking it too far, which I think in some cases maybe they are. When children are walking away with bruises on their bodies, I think, obviously it's clear that there's obviously a little bit too much happening. So I think that just the availability of the media, like Kayla said, and just talking developments in psychology and seeing really what's going to happen to the parents that do it as far as their psychological health and as far as the child's psychological health, I think that's really kind of brought up some issues that made it seem okay, well, it's really more harmful than it is positive for the child to be spanked.
Right, and I remember before the show you were telling me of an incident that you had saw on TV that had to do with corporal punishment and a parent being involved in more of a case than him just, basing on discipline.
I don't remember all the details of the situation, but basically he considered what he was doing to his daughter spanking, and she considered it abuse, and they didn't see eye to eye on it, and she set up a video camera in her room one time when he came in to spank her, and she presented it to a judge, and they went on and did a case about it, and he ended up getting charged with an abuse charge. So.
All right. That's another thing that I sometimes wonder about, whether a child, if you don't talk to your child about being spanked and you hit them for no reason, do they feel more of a neglect or a sadness, depression? Do they feel like you're doing something wrong to them? On the study of the child aspect of that situation, what do you think? How do you think the child feels?
Right. Well, I think there's a fine line between spanking a child and punishing them for their bad behaviors and child abuse. And so it's defined as abuse is going to be if it's an intentional infliction of harm on the child. And then spanking is, obviously they're not trying to harm the child or have any intent of harming the child. It's just trying to resolve a bad behavior. And so I think that when parents do it without giving any rationale to the child of why it's happening, the child, it becomes kind of a hit or miss situation, and the child doesn't really know why it's happening. So I think they take it more personally, and they think, okay, I'm just going to get hit all the time. And in a way, they kind of start learning a learned helplessness because they don't know why it's happening. It's really an infrequent behavior. They're not really sure what they've done wrong. And so in a way, they kind of have to start internalizing the behavior and feeling depressed and feel like there's no way to get out of this situation because they're not sure why the parents are doing it. So yeah, I think it's very bad for the parents to spank the child or hit the child and not really give them a rational reason why they did it or what the child did wrong, so they have a clear understanding of why they're being punished.
Okay, yes, I understand that perfectly. So I worked with this lady, and she was telling me of a story how the first time she went to discipline her child, she was in the Walmart parking lot, and she went to spank him, and some teenager yelled out child abuse, and that embarrassed not only her but probably the kid at the same time, not knowing what that really meant. And she didn't know whether to confront that girl about saying that in public because it's not something that people joke about. How do you think the parent should have reacted to that, as staying calm about that? Because if I was a parent, I don't really know how I would deal with that.
I think it's obvious that the teenagers don't have children of their own, and they're trying to take it out of context and make the parent feel more uncomfortable with the situation. And it's a hard situation for the parent to be in, especially disciplining their child in public. So I think that, if a parent's in that situation, they really just kind of have to ignore it and move forward and not let themselves look weak to the child. They have to stand firm in their decision and not back off as far as trying to make the child adjust their behaviors. But it is it is a really hard situation. I mean, have you ever, I don't know if you haven't ever been in that situation, but how do you think you would react if you...
if someone yelled that to me while I was spanking my child? Obviously it would just probably annoy me more than anything because I know my son, I know the situation, I know that I would never abuse my child. It is embarrassing, of course, if other people heard the teenager say that and there was other people around. But I would probably just try to ignore it and stand firm in whatever I was doing.
Great. Yeah. Well, all right. So now that you've listened to the statistics and the facts on corporal punishment and how psychologists see it, do you think that's persuaded you on whether or not you should spank your child or whether you shouldn't, or are you still undecisive about it at this point?
I think I've made up my mind that I'm not going to spank my son because I don't know what his genetic predispositions are, but I can look at just me and his father and how we are, and his father did have antisocial behavior and has been in trouble and got into drugs and abusive behavior and has been arrested and stuff all through his teenage years. So I don't know if Eli's going to be like that or not, but I think as a mother I can just explain why he shouldn't do something, just giving love and acceptance and warmth, and I probably won't spank unless, if I ever did, I would explain why I'm doing it, but I plan not to spank after hearing this.
And that's I'm glad you made that decision for yourself and for your child. I think that's good that we helped you, figure that out. I want to thank Vanessa and Kayla for coming today. I hope that their facts and their experiences have helped you to realize what you should or should not do when you become a parent. And if you are a parent, whether or not, corporal punishment is the best thing for your child or whether it's not. I hope y'all have a good day, and thank y'all for joining in.